Hello, hello, hello. Can anyone hear me? Hey, sorry about that. I'm quite a bit late. I'm sorry about that. Um, yeah, I was a bit busy, but thankfully, I'm here now, and as you can probably notice, my audio isn't shit anymore. Fantastic, okay, so first of all, I need to do a couple of things. First of all, thank you so much to Haas00312 for the follow. I really appreciate it. I hope, and I'm sorry that, I'm so late today. But thank you so much for the follow. I hope I can, continue to earn your support. And yeah, I hope, I hope I can give you a lot of content to enjoy. Thank you so much. So yeah, first of all, let's say today we're gonna be reading Game of Thrones, the original, the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. I actually wanted to use the font of the books for the title, but whatever, no biggie. I couldn't find it, so it's okay. So yeah, now I'm actually very happy about, again, the fact that I have a microphone now, the fact that I have headphones that are comfortable now. You have no idea how much of a difference it makes. Um, Wait a minute. Oh, God damn it! Just a moment. Okay, there we go. That should be better, hopefully. Yeah, for a moment I didn't notice that I had the microphone all set up and I forgot to turn it on. God damn it. I'm such an idiot. Well, great start so far. But now it should sound way better. Yeah, actually just let me check just in case that it's the right that's not what I wanted. To Here we go. Okay. That's the one. That okay. Now it should sound good. Does it sound good? Does it finally sound good? Because goddamn, um, yeah. Okay. I was pretty sure I set up all of this before the stream. But no biggie. Just lost a couple, like 2 minutes. Maybe a bit of a biggie now that you know, yeah. Maybe, I mean, I lost just a couple minutes, so not too bad. And yeah, okay, let's begin, shall we? I mean, uh, but first of all, I actually just want to, and I know, having a microphone is such a basic thing, but to me, it's so cool. Like I have like I have it right in front of me. I feel like I feel so weird. It feels so cool, to have one. Which I did used to have one, but it was a very crappy USB microphone. This one's still USB, but I feel like it's for USB. It's pretty good. Um, you know, so yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. Let's uh let's have a hooray in the chat for good audio quality now. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Hell yeah. Oh, that's so lame. Anyways, without further ado, let's begin reading. We're already a couple minutes late, so I can go a couple minutes over. To make up for that. I'm so sorry about the fact that today I kind of um I kind of was super late uh to the stream, but um here I am now. What's this? Yeah, okay. Discord also wanted me to ask me if I needed to set up a new audio device. So yeah, actually, just let me real quick check the audio. Like, so I'm gonna in a new window open up the stream, see how it sounds. Hopefully, it should
work now because I can always I can hear myself, but I don't know how you can hear me. So I'm gonna mute the part where I can hear myself and instead go for the stream audio. Yeah, yeah. I actually even got a refund on the microphone because they sent it a bit late. So uh, yeah, since they sent it a bit late, I actually I actually ended up getting a refund out of it, and that's so weird. Because I feel like it actually arrived on time. Like originally they told me it would arrive on, I believe, I believe on Saturday. Um, yeah, I believe they said it would arrive on Saturday, but then they told me no, it's gonna arrive on Monday, and then it actually arrived on Sunday. So it still arrived. I mean, if you see it like that, it still arrived early, and but for whatever reason, you know, uh, for whatever reason, they still gave me a refund. Which I'm not complaining. I'm just kind of worried because I kind of feel bad. Maybe someone got in trouble for that, and I hope not because it's Amazon, and we all know the stories about Amazon. So again, I'm not complaining. Uh, yeah, so I'm just kind of worried for you know that person. But whatever. In any case, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the follow. It came before the stream. I don't think it's registered yet. Uh, but whatever. Thank you so much for following. And yeah, I've actually already wasted 15 minutes of your time. You came here for some, basically audiobook of Game of Thrones. So like, here's my performance. So let's begin. It still has that smell of like book, you know. I really like that book smell. It's not even new anymore. Oh, shit. uh, sorry, I almost like I like moved the pop shield accidentally. But yeah, no, it's not even a new book anymore, but it still smells amazing. So you know that's good for me. Anyways, let's begin. So A Game of Thrones, obviously by George R. Martin, one number one New York Times bestseller author. Um, okay, also a couple of reviews here. So the book starts. It says this one is for Melinda. I do not know who Melinda is. Is that his wife? Huh. I'm gonna Google that later. I'm gonna check if that's George R. Martin's wife. But yeah, this one is for Melinda. And actually, you know what? I actually do know something that I want to do before. In the books here, we actually have at the beginning we have a map of both, the north and the south, and I feel like that's important for context. That might be. So I'm just gonna. Yeah, real quick, I'm just gonna look for that. For the one that's like the same here that's on the book. Uh, um, yeah, actually, I didn't consider that. I probably should have. Okay, here we go. Is this one good quality? Is this HD? Let me. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is. I'm opening the image and can I zoom in? Come on, zoom. Um, why is it not zooming? Ah, god damn. Oh yeah, yeah. Cause again, I'm really sorry. I was super late. I was like today's stream, but uh, I actually had to hurry over here. Um, so that was a problem. I think my brother was here. He was just like playing on his phone. I have a brother, by the way. I don't think I've ever mentioned that. RPG. Why is it? Why does it say RPG? I guess I must have left that from some other point. Come on. I actually, well, no, actually, now that I think about it, I haven't mentioned about much about my family. I actually have two brothers. Both of them are older than me. So, fun fact about me, getting to know me already. Come on. I don't know why the image is giving such a hard time loading on stream. But oh well. Yeah, in case if it doesn't really like load, uh, yeah, if it doesn't start like loading, I could just like leave it there. I just to wait and just start reading already, because I don't wanna you know waste too much more time. Um. Yep. Oh yeah, this one's actually super HD. Uh, kind of actually. Um. Yeah, I keep zooming in and I can still see very well what it says. So, that's great. Uh, sure. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I should be reading already. Goddamn. I already have this new microphone. My audio is finally clean. As clean as I can get it to be at the moment. Okay. So I'm gonna move myself over here. Uh, yeah, over there. So so I could just put up the map of Westeros and have that in there. So you have all the context of all the places. What you're looking at, what I'm talking about. Okay, it's a bit too big. Um, um, hmm. Okay, I hope you can see it well enough like that. Let me just actually move the title a little bit. Yeah, sure. There's good enough. Well, not the title, the text of what we're reading today. And yeah, let's bring it up a bit more. Uh, okay, there we go. So hopefully that should be good enough. You can. I hope it allows you to zoom in because that's a very detailed map. You can also Google it. Actually, I'm gonna put the link on the. I'm gonna put the link in the chat just in case. You can look at the map right there. Um, and yeah, let's actually start now. Actually, for once, because we've lost too much time. It's almost half an hour, and yeah. Okay. Prologue. Okay. We should start back. Garrett urged as the woods began to grow dark around them. The wildlings are dead. Do the dead frighten you? Sir Wymer Royce asked with just the hint of a smile. Garrett did not rise to the bait. He was an old man, past 50, and he had seen the lordlings come and go. Dead is dead, he said. We have no business with the dead. Are they dead? Royce asked softly. What proof have we? Will saw them, Garrett said. If he says they are dead, that's proof enough for me. Proof enough for me. Uh, Will had known they would drag him into the quarrel sooner or later. He wished it had been later rather than sooner. My mother told me that dead men sing no songs, he put in. My wet nurse said the same thing, Will. Royce replied. Never believe anything you hear at a woman's teeth. There are things to be learned even from the dead, his voice echoed, too loud in the twilight forest. We have a long ride before us, Garrett pointed out. 8 days, maybe 9, and night is falling. Sir Wymer Royce glanced at the sky with the dis- with glanced at the sky with disinterest. It does that every day about this time. Are you unmanned by the dark, Garrett? Will could see the tightness around Garrett's mouth, the barely suppressed anger in his eyes under the thick black hood of his clothes. Garrett has spent 40 years in the Night's Watch, man and boy, and he was not accustomed to being made light of. Yet it was more than that. Under the wounded pride, Will could sense something else in the older man. You could taste it, a nervous tension that came perilously close to fear. Will shared his unease. He had been 4 years on the wall. The first time he had been sent beyond, all the old stories had come rushing back, and his bowels had turned to water. He had laughed about it afterwards. He had a veteran of 100 rangings by now, and the endless dark wilderness that the southern called the haunted forest had no more terrors for him. Oh, he was a veteran of 100 rings. Okay, so we're following the POV of Will in this chapter, in the prologue. Until tonight, something was different. No, and no, okay, sorry. The haunted forest had no more terrors for him until tonight. Something was different tonight. There was an edge to this darkness that made his hackles rise. 9 days they had been riding, north and northwest, and then north again, farther and farther from the wall, hard on the track of a band of wildling riders. Raiders? Each day had been worse than the day that had come before it. Today was the worst of all. A cold wind was blowing out of the north, and it made the trees rustle like living things. All day, Will had felt as though something were watching. something cold and implacable that loved him not. Garrett had felt it too. Will wanted nothing so much as to ride hellbent for the safety of the wall, but that was not a feeling to share with your commander. Especially not a commander like this one. Sir Wymer Royce was the youngest son of an ancient house with too many heirs. He was a handsome youth of 18, great-eyed and graceful and slender as a knife. Mounted on his huge black destrier, I don't know how to pronounce that word, sorry, destrier, I think, the knight towered above Will and Garrett on their small garrons. Okay, so I see that someone just joined us. So we're following the POV of Will in the prologue. We're in the second page so far. Uh, if you happen to be Hus00312, thank you so much for the follow. I hope I can continue to earn your support. And yeah, let's continue reading. Uh, yeah, Sir Wyman Royce was the youngest son of an ancient house with too many heirs. He was a handsome youth of 18, great eyed and graceful, and slender as a knife. Mounted on his huge black destrier, the knight towered above Will and Garrett on their smaller garrons. He wore black leather boots, black woolen pants, black moleskin gloves, and a fine supple coat of gleaming black ringmail over layers of black wool and boiled leather. Sir Wymer had been a sworn brother of the Night's Watch for less than half a year, but no one could say he had not prepared for his vocation, at least in so far as his wardrobe was concerned. His cloak was his crowning glory, stable, thick, and black as and soft as sin. Bet he killed them all himself, he did, Garrett told the barracks over wine. Twisted their little heads off, or mighty warrior. They had all shared the laugh. It is hard to take orders from a man you laughed at in your cups, Will reflected, as he sat shivering atop his gown. Garrett must have felt the same. Mormont said we should track them, and we did, Garrett said. They're dead. They shan't trouble us no more. There's hard riding before us. I don't like this. I don't like this weather. If it snows, we could it, we could be a fortnight getting back, and snow's the best we can hope for. Ever seen a nice storm, my lord? The lordling seemed not to hear him. He studied the deepening twilight in that half bored, half distracted way he had. Will had ridden with the knight long enough to understand that it was best not to interrupt him when he looked like that. Tell me again what you saw, Will. All the details. Leave nothing out. Will had been a hundred. Well, no. Will had been a hunter before he joined the Night's Watch. Well, a poacher in truth. Malister free riders had caught him red-handed in the Malister's own woods, skinning one of the Malister's own bucks, and it had been a choice of putting on the black or losing a hand. No one could move through the woods as silent as Will, and it had not taken the Black brothers long to discover his talent. The camp is 2 miles farther on, over that ridge, hard beside the stream, Will said. I got close as I dared. There's 8 of them, men and women both. No children I could see. They put up, leaned to against the rock. The snow's pretty well covered it now, but I could still make it out. No fire burning, but the fire pit was still plain as day. No one moving. I watched a long time. No living man ever laid so still. Did you see any blood? Well, no, Will admitted. Did you see any weapons? Some swords, a few bows. One man had an axe. I'm trying to do the accent. If you notice, I'm sorry. Let me know if it's not working. But you know. Okay, so few swords, a few bows. One man had an axe, heavy-looking, double-bladed, a cruel piece of iron. It was on the ground beside him, right by his hand. Did you make note of the position of the bodies? Will shrugged. A couple are sitting up against the rock, most of them on the ground, fallen like. Or sleeping, Roy suggested. Fallen, Will insisted. There's one woman up an ironwood, half hid in the branches, a far eyes. He smiled thinly. I took care she never saw me. When I got closer, I saw she wasn't moving either. Despite himself, he shivered. You have a chill, Royce asked. Some, Will muttered. The wind, my lord. The young knight turned back into the young knight turned back to his grizzled man-at-arms. Frost-fallen, le- Frost-fallen leaves whispered past them, and Roy's gesture moved restlessly. What do you think might have killed this man, Garrett? Sir Wymer asked casually. He adjusted the drape of his long sable cloak. It was the cold, Garrett said with iron certainty. I saw men freeze last winter, and the one before. When I was half a boy, everyone talks about snows 40 foot deep and how the ice wind comes howling out of the north. But the real enemy is the cold. It steals up on you, quieter than will, and at first you shiver and your teeth clatter and you stamp your feet and dream of mulled wine and nice hot fires. It burns, it does. Nothing burns like the cold, but only for a while. Then it gets inside you and starts to fill you up. And after a while, you don't have the you don't have the strength to fight it. It's easier just to sit down or go first. Uh, sorry, I got lost for a moment. Um, Easier to just sit down or go to sleep. They say you don't feel any pain toward the end. First, you go weak and drowsy, and everything starts to fade. And then, it's like sinking into the sea of warm milk. Peaceful like. Such eloquence, Garrett, Sir Weimar observed. I never suspected you had it in you. So, yes, we can tell Sir Weimar is a cunt. Am I allowed to say that on? Oh, well, I already did. Uh, okay. I've had the cold in me too, lordling. Garrett pulled back his hood, giving Sir Weimar a good long look at the stumps where his ears had been. 2 ears, 3 toes, and the little finger of my left hand. I got off light. We found my brother frozen at his watch. With a smile on his face, Sir Weimar shrugged. You ought dress more warmly, Garrett. Jesus Christ, man. Might as well tell them. Might as well tell them, let them eat cake. Jesus Christ, with this, fucking lord, fucking bourgeoisie. Garrett glared at the lordling. The scars around his ear holes flushed red with anger, where Maester Aemon had cut the ears away. We'll see how warm you can dress when the winter comes. He pulled up his hood and hunched over his garret, silent and sullen. If Garrett said it was cold, Will began. Have you drawn any watches this past week, Will? Yes, my lord. There never was a week when he did not draw a dozen bloody watches. What was the man driving at? And how did you find the wall? Weeping, Will said, frowning. He said it clear enough now. that the Lording had pointed it out. They couldn't have froze. Not if the wall was weeping. It wasn't cold enough. Royce nodded. Bright lad, we've had a few light frosts this past week, and a quick flurry of snow now and then, but surely no cold fierce enough to kill 8 grown men, men clad in fur and leather. Let me remind you, with shelter near at hand, and the means of making fire. The knight's smile was cocksure. Will, lead us there. I would see these dead men for myself. And then there was nothing to be done for it. The order had been given, and honor bound them to obey. Will went in front, his shaggy little Garum picking the way carefully through the undergrowth. A light snow had fallen the night before, and there were stones and roots and hidden sinks lying just under its crust, waiting for the careless and the unwary. Sir Wymer Royce came next, his great black destrier snorting impatiently. The warhorse was the wrong mount for ranging, but try and tell that to the lordling. Garin brought up the rear. The old man at arms muttered to himself as he rode. Twilight deepened. The cloudless skies turned a deep purple, the color of an old bruise, then faded to black. The stars began to come out. A half moon rose. Will was grateful for the light. We can make a better place than this, surely, Royce. We can make a better pace than this, surely, Royce said when the moon was full risen. Not with this horse, Will said. Fear had made him insolent. Perhaps my lord would care to take the lead. Sir Wymer Royce did not deign to reply. Somewhere off in the wood a wolf howled. Will pulled his Garan over beneath an ancient gnarled ironwood and dismounted. Why are you stopping? Sir Wymer asked. Best go the rest of the way on foot, my lord. It's just over that ridge. Royce paused a moment, staring off into the distance. His face was reflective. A cold wind whispered through the trees. His great sable cloak stirred behind like something half alive. There's something wrong here, Garrett muttered. The young knight gave him a disdainful smile. Is there? Can you feel it? Garrett asked. Listen to the darkness. Will could feel it. 4 years in the night's watch, and he had never been so afraid. What was it? Wind. Trees rustling. A wolf. Which sound is it that unmans you so, Garrett? When Garrett did not answer, Royce slid gracefully from his saddle. He tied the destrier securely to a low-hanging limb, well away from the other horses, and drew his longsword from its sheath. Jewels glittered in its hilt, and the moonlight ran down the shining steel. It was a splendid weapon, castle forged, and new made from the look of it. Will doubted it had ever been swung in anger. The trees press close here, Will warned. That sword will tangle you up, my lord. Better a knife. I need instruction. I will ask for it, the young lord said. Garrett, stay here. Guard the horses. Garrett dismounted. We need a fire. I'll see to it. How big a fool are you, old man? If there are enemies in this wood, a fire is the last thing we want. There's some enemies a fire will keep away, Garrett said. Bears and direwolves and other things. Sir Wymer's mouth became a hard line. No fire. Garrett's hood shadowed his face, but Will could see the hard glitter in his eyes. as he stared at the night. For a moment he was afraid the older man would go for his sword. It was a short, ugly thing, its grip discolored by sweat, its edge nicked from hard use, but Will would not have given an iron bob for the lordling's life if Gerd pulled it from its scabbard. Finally, Gerd looked down. No fire, he muttered, low under his breath. Royce took it for acquaintance and turned away. Lead on, he said to Will. Will threaded their way through a thicket, then started up the slope to the low ridge when he had found his vantage point under the sentinel tree. Under the thin crust of snow, the ground was damp and muddy, sleek footing with rocks and hidden roots to trip you up. Will made no sound as he climbed. Behind him, he heard the soft metallic slither of the lordling's ringmail, the rustle of leaves, and the muttered curses as reaching branches grabbed at his longsword, tugged on his splendid sable cloak. The great sentinel was right there at the top of the ridge, where Will had known it would be, its lowest branches a fair foot off the ground. Will slid underneath, flat on his belly in the snow and the mud, and looked down on the empty clearing below. His heart stopped in his chest. For a moment he dared not breathe. Moonlight shone down on the clearing, the ashes of the fire pit, the snow-covered lean-to, the great rock, the little half-frozen stream. Everything was just as it had been a few hours ago. They were gone. All the bodies were gone. Gods! He heard behind him. A sword slashed at the branch as Sir Wymer Royce gained the ridge. He stood there beside the sentinel, longsword in hand, his cloak billowing behind him as the wind came up, outlined nobly against the stars for all to see. Get down, Will whispered urgently. Something's wrong. Royce did not move. He looked down at the empty clearing and laughed. Your dead men seem to have moved camp, Will. Will's voice abandoned him. He groped for words that did not come. It was not possible. His eyes swept back and forth over the abandoned campsite, stopped on the axe, a huge double-bladed battle axe, still laying where he had seen it last, untouched, a valuable weapon. On your feet, Will, Sir Wymer commanded. There is no one here. I won't have you hiding under a bush. Reluctantly, Will obeyed. Sir Wymer looked him over with open disapproval. I am not going back to Castle Black, a failure on my first ranging. We will find these men. He glanced around. Up the tree. Be quick about it. Look for a fire. Will turned away, wordless. There was no use to argue. The wind was moving. It cut right through him. He went to the tree, a ballowing green sentinel, and began to climb. Soon as his hands were sticky with sap and he was lost among the needles, fear filled his gut, like a meal he could not digest. He whispered a prayer to the nameless gods of the wood and slipped his dirk free of its sheath. He put it between his teeth to keep both hands free for climbing. The taste of cold iron in his mouth gave him comfort. Down below, the lordling called out suddenly, Who goes there? Will heard uncertainty in the challenge. He stopped climbing. He listened. He watched. The woods gave answer. The rustle of leaves, the icy rush of the stream, a distant hoot of a snow owl. The others made no sound. Will saw movement from the corner of his eyes, pale shapes gliding through the wood. He turned his head, glimpsed a white shadow in the darkness. Then it was gone. Branches stirred gently in the wind. scratching at one another with wooden fingers. Will opened his mouth to call down a warning, and the words seemed to freeze in his throat. Perhaps he was wrong. Perhaps it had only been a bird, a reflection on the snow, some trick of the moonlight. What he what had he seen after all? Will, where are you? Sir Wymer called up. Can you see anything? He was turning in a slow circle. Suddenly, worry his sword at hand. He must have felt them, as Will felt them. There was nothing to see. Answer me! Why is it so cold? It was cold, shivering. Will clung more tightly to his perch. His face pressed, his face pressed hard against the trunk of the sentinel. He could feel the sweet, sticky sap on his cheek. A shadow emerged from the dark of the wood. It stood in front of Royce. Tall it was, and gaunt, and hard as old bones, with flesh pale as milk. Its armor seemed to change color as it moved. Here it was, white as newly fallen snow. There, black as shadow, everywhere, drab, dappled with the deep gray green of the trees. The patterns ran like moonlight on water with every step it took. Will heard the breath go out of Sir Wymer Royce in a long hiss. Come no farther! No further, yeah, farther, the lordling warned. His voice cracked like a boy's. He threw the long stable cloak back over his shoulders to free his arms for battle, and took his sword in both hands. The wind had stopped. It was very cold. The other slid forward on silent feet. In its hand was a longsword like none that Will had ever seen. No human metal had gone into the forging of that blade. It was alive with moonlight, translucent, a shard of crystal so thin that it seemed almost to vanish when seen edge on. There was a faint blue shimmer to the thing, a ghost light that played around its edges, and somehow Will knew it was sharper than any razor. Sir Wymer met him bravely. Dance with me, then. He lifted his sword high over his head, defiant. His hands trembled from the weight of it, or perhaps from the cold. Yet in that moment, Will thought, he was a boy no longer, but a man of the night's watch. The other halted. Will saw its eyes. Blue, deeper and bluer than any human eyes, a blue that burned like ice. They fixed on the long sword, trembling on high. Watched the moonlight running cold along the metal. For a heartbeat he dared to hope. They emerged silently from the shadows. Twins to the first. Three of them, four, five. Sir Wymer may have felt the cold that came with them, but he never saw them, never heard them. Will had to call out. It was his duty, and his death, if he did. He shivered and hugged the tree and kept the silence. The pale sword came shivering through the air. Sir Wymer met it with steel. When the blades met, there was no ring of metal on metal, only a high, thin sound at the edge of hearing, like an animal screaming in pain. Royce checked a second blow and a third, then fell back a step, another flurry of blows, and he fell back again. Behind him, to the right, to the left, all around him, the watchers stood, patient, faceless, silent, the shifting patterns of their delicate armor making them all but invisible in the wood. Yet they made no move to interfere. Again and again the swords met, until Will wanted to cover his ears against the strange anguish kneeing of their clash. Sir Wymer was panting from the effort now, his breath steaming in the moonlight. His blade was white with frost. The others danced with pale blue light. Then Roy's parry came a bit too late. The pale sword bit through the ring mail beneath his arm. The young lord cried out in pain. Blood welled between the rings. It steamed in the cold, and the droplets seemed red as fire where they touched the snow. Sir Wymer's fingers brushed his side. His moleskin glove came away soaked with red. The other said something in a language that Will did not know. His voice was like the cracking of ice on a winter lake, and the words were mocking. Sir Wymer Royce found his fury. For Robert! He shouted, and he came up snarling, lifting the frost covered longsword with both hands and swinging it around in a flat sidearm slash with all his weight behind it. The other's parry was almost lazy. When the blades touched, the steel shattered. A scream echoed through the forest night, and the longsword shivered into 100 brittle pieces, the shards scattering like a rain of needles. Royce went to his knees, shrieking, and covered his eyes. Blood welled between his fingers. The watchers moved forward together as if some signal had been given. Swords rose and fell, all in a deathly silence. It was called butchery. The pale blades sliced through ring mail as if it were silk. Will closed his eyes. Far beneath him, he heard their voices and laughter, sharp as icicles. When he found the courage to look again, a long time had passed, and the ridge below was empty. He stayed in the tree, scarce daring to breathe, while the moon crept slowly across the black sky. Finally, his muscles cramping and his fingers numb with cold, he climbed down. Roy's body lay face down in the snow, one arm outflung. The thick sable cloak had been slashed in a dozen places. Lying dead like that, you saw how young he was, a boy. He found what was left of the sword, and a few feet away, the end splintered and twisted like a tree struck by lightning. Will knelt, looked around warily, and snatched it up. The broken sword would be his proof. Garrett would know what to make of it, and if not him, then surely that old bear Mormont or Maester Aemon. Would Garrett still be waiting with the horses? He had to hurry. Will rose. Sir Wymer Rose stood over him. His fine clothes were a tatter, his face a ruin. A shard from his sword transfixed the blind white pupil of his left eye. The right eye was open. The pupil burned blue. It saw. The broken sword fell from nerveless fingers. Will closed his eyes to pray. Long, elegant hands brushed his cheek, then tightened around his throat. They were gloved in the finest moleskin and sticky with blood, yet the touch was icy cold. Okay, that was the prologue. We followed Will on on his POV. He was on a ranging beyond the wall. So yeah, I don't know if you can see, but they're somewhere here up north. Uh, there and yeah, that's basically where they are. They're ranging beyond the wall. Here you can see the wall, and you have the cocky Sir Waymer, who's still a boy, basically, who's but he's a lord. He comes from actually like an important family, so he was giving command or whatnot, and he got murdered. Yeah, he was kind of a prick, not gonna lie. Anyways, Will also died. He got choked at the end. I really liked it. Uh, Next up, let's we're gonna start with the first chapter, Bran. The chapters don't have names. They do, however, tell you who is whose POV we're following. So we're gonna be following Bran. This is fun fact. This is the first chapter that was written for the book series. Before it was even planned to be a book series or even a single book, George R. R. Martin says that he just kind of envisioned, he just kind of started writing and wrote this chapter, you know, and then the story just started from there. So yeah, uh, so far so good. Let's continue with uh, let's continue with the first chapter, Bran. I mean, it's from Bran's POV. I mean, the morning had dawned clear and cold, with a crispness that hinted at the end of summer. They set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all, and Bran rode among them, nervous with excitement. This was the first time he had been deemed old enough to go with his lord father and his brothers to see the king's justice done. It was the 9th year of summer, and the 7th of Bran's life. The man had been taken outside a small holdfast in the hills. Rob thought he was a wildling, his sword sworn to man's rating, the king beyond the wall. It made Bran's skin prickle to think of it. He remembered the hearth tales old Nan told them. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slavers and slayers and thieves. They consorted with giants and ghouls, stole girl children in the dead of the night, a dark blood from polished horns, and their women lay with the others in the long night, to sire terrible half-human children. But the man they found, bound hand and foot to the holdfast while awaiting the king's justice, was old and scrawny, not much taller than Rob. He had lost both ears and fingers to frostbite, and he dressed all in black, the same as a brother of the Night's Watch, except that his furs were ragged and greasy. The breath of man and horse mingled, steaming, in the cold morning air as his lord father had the man cut down from the wall and dragged before them. Rob and John sat tall, still on their horses, with Bran between them on his pony, trying to seem older than 7, trying to pretend that he'd seen all this before. A faint wind blew through the holdfast gate. Over their heads flapped the banner of the Starks of Winterfell, a grey direwolf racing across an ice-white field. Bran's father sat solemnly on his horse, long brown hair steering in the wind. His closely trimmed beard was shot with white, making him look older than his 35 years. He had a grim cast to his grey eyes this, this day, and he seemed not at all the man who would sit before the fire in the evening and talk softly of the age of heroes and the children of the forest. He had taken off father's face, Bran thought, and donned the face of Lord Stark of Winterfell. There were questions asked and answers given, there in the chill of the morning, but afterward Bran could not recall much of what had been said. Finally, his lord father gave a command, and 2 of his guardsmen dragged the ragged man to the ironwood stump in the center of the square. They forced his head down on the hard black wood. Lord Eddard Stark dismounted, and his ward, Theon Greyjoy, brought forth the sword Ice. That sword was called. For the sword. Ice, that sword was called. It was as wide across as a man's hand, and taller than even Rob. The blade was Valyrian steel, spell forged, and dark as smoke. Nothing held an edge like Valyrian steel. His father peeled off his gloves and handed them to Jory Castle, the captain of his household guard. He took hold of Ice with both hands and said, "In the name of Robert of House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals and the Rhoynar, and the First Man, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, by the words of Eddard Stark of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, I do sentence you to die." He lifted the great sword high above his head. Bran's bastard brother, Jon Snow, moved closer. "Keep the pony well in hand," he whispered, "and don't look away. Father will know if you'll do." Bran kept his pony well in hand and did not look away. His father took off the man's head with a single sure stroke. Blood sprayed out across the snow, as red as summer wine. One of the horses reared and had to be restrained to keep from bolting. Bran could not take his eyes off the blood. The snows around the stump drank it eagerly, reddening as he watched. The head bounced off a thick root and rolled. The head bounced off a thick root and rolled. It came up near Greyjoy's feet. Theon was a lean, dark youth of 19 who found everything amusing. He laughed, put his boot on the head, and kicked it away. "Ass," Jon muttered, low enough so Greyjoy did not hear. He put a hand on Bran's shoulder, and Bran looked over at his bastard brother. "You did well," Jon told him, solemnly. Jon was 14, and an old hand at justice. It seemed colder on the long ride back to Winterfell, though the wind had died by then and the sun was higher than the sky. Bran rode with his brothers well ahead of the main party, his pony struggling hard to keep up with their horses. The deserter died bravely, Robb said. He was big and broad and growing every day, with his mother's coloring, the fair skin, red-brown hair, and blue eyes of the Tullys of Riverrun. He had courage at least. "No," Jon Snow said quietly. "It was not courage. This one was dead of fear. You could see it in his eyes, Stark." Jon's eyes were a grey so dark they seemed almost black, but there was little they did not see. He was of an age with Robb, but they did not look alike. Jon was slender where Robb was muscular, dark where Robb was fair, and graceful and quick where his half-brother was strong and fast. Robb was not impressed. The other takes his the others take his eyes, he swore. "He died well. Race you to the bridge?" "Done," Jon said, kicking his horse forward. Robb cursed and followed, and they galloped off down the trail, Robb laughing and hooting, Jon silent and intent. The hooves of their horses kicked up showers of snow as they went. Bran did not try to follow. His pony could not keep up. He had seen the ragged man's eyes, and he was thinking of them now. After a while, the sound of Robb's laughter receded, and the woods grew silent again. So deep in thought he was that he had never heard the rest of the party until his father moved up to ride beside him. "Are you well, Bran?" he asked, not unkindly. "Yes, father," Bran told him. He looked up. Wrapped in his furs and leathers, mounted on his great war horse, in his fur, his lord father loomed over him like a giant. "Robb says the man died bravely, but Jon says he was afraid." "What do you think?" his father asked. Bran thought about it. Can a man still be brave if he's afraid? That is the only time a man can be brave, his father told him. Do you understand why I did it? He was a wildling, Bran said. They carry off women and sell them to the others. His lord father smiled. Old Nan has been telling you stories again. In truth, the man was an oathbreaker, a deserter from the Night's Watch. No man is more dangerous. The deserter knows his life is forfeit if he is taken, so he will not flinch from any crime, no matter how vile. But you mistake me. The question was not why the man had to die, but why I must do it. Bran had no answer for that. King Robert has headsmen, he said uncertainly. He does, his father admitted, as did the Targaryen kings before him. Yet, as did the Targaryen kings before him. Yet our way is the older way. The blood of the first men still flows in the veins of the Starks, and we hold to the belief that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. If you would take a man's life, you owe it to him to look him in the eyes and hear his final words. And if you cannot bear to do that, then perhaps the man does not deserve to die. One day, Bran, you will be Rob's bannerman, holding a keep of your own for your brother and your king, and justice will fall to you. When that day comes, you must take no pleasure in the task, but neither must you look away. A ruler who hides behind paid executioners soon forgets what death is. That was when Jon reappeared on the crest of the hill before him. He waved and shouted down at them. Father, Bran, come quick. See what Robb has found. Then he was gone again. Jory rode up beside them. Trouble, my lord. Beyond a doubt, his lord father said. Come, let us see what mischief my sons have rooted out now. He sent his horse into a trot. Jory and Bran and the rest came after. They found Robb on the river bank north of the bridge, with Jon still mounted beside him. The the late summer snows had been heavy this moon turn. Robb stood knee deep in white, his hood pulled back so the sun shone in his hair. He was cradling something in his arm, while the boys talked in hushed, excited voices. The riders picked their way carefully through the drifts, groping for solid footing on the hidden, uneven ground. Jory Castle and Theon Greyjoy were the first to reach the boys. Greyjoy was laughing and joking as he rode. Bran heard the breath go out of him. Gods! He exclaimed, struggling to keep control of his horse as he reached for his sword. Jory's sword was already out. Robb, get away from it! He called as his horse reared under him. Robb grinned and looked up from the bundle in his arms. She can't hurt you, he said. She's dead, Jory. Bran was afire with curiosity by then. He would have spurred the pony faster, but his father made them dismount beside the ridge and approach on foot. Bran jumped off and ran. By then, Jon, Jory, and Theon Greyjoy had all dismounted as well.
Oh my god, it's raining. Oh my god, can you hear the rain? Okay, give me a moment. I think I know how. Just in case. There's something I can do for this. Okay. Okay. That should be a bit better. Instead of the pop shield, I'm using a wind shield, a wind thing. What's the name? The black like foam thing that you put on top of a microphone. That.
that should make it so it's not. Yeah, this one is actually from an old mic I used to have in high school, but I found it when I was looking for, like, when I got this new microphone. I was looking for the what's its. I was looking for the old, like, case that I had for my previous microphone, and that microphone is years old. It also stopped working years ago. So yeah, I was looking for that, and in the case I found like a cables and the stand. So I have a replacement just in case. It's the same type, and I also found this windshield, wind cover thingy. Forget what it's called. Anyways, let's continue. Um, where were we? Oh, um, okay. By then, John, Jory, and Theon Greyjoy had all dismounted as well. What in seven hells is this? Greyjoy was saying. A wolf, Robert told him. A freak, Greyjoy said. Look at the size of it. Bran's heart was thumping in his chest as he pushed through a waist high drift to his brother's side. Half buried in blood stained snow, a huge dark shape slumped in death. Ice had formed in its shaggy gray fur, and the faint smell of corruption clung to it like a woman's perfume. Bran glimpsed blind eyes crawling with maggots, a white mouth full of yellow teeth. But it was the size of it that made him gasp. It was bigger than his pony, twice the size of the largest hound in his father's kennel. It's no freak, Jon said calmly. That's a direwolf. They grow larger than the other kind. Theon Greyjoy said, There's not been a direwolf sighted south of the wall in 200 years. I see one now, Jon replied. Bran tore his eyes away from the monster. That was when he noticed the bundle in Rob's arms. He gave a cry of delight and moved closer. What's oh. Okay. Sorry. Give a cry of delight and move closer. Okay. The pup was a tiny ball of gray-black fur, its eyes still closed. It nuzzled blindly against Rob's chest as he cradled it, searching for milk among his leathers, making a little sad whimper sound. Brown reached out hesitantly. Go on, Rob told him. You can touch him. Brown gave the pup a quick, nervous stroke, then turned as Jon said, Here you go. His half brother put a second pup into his arms. There are 5 of them. Bran sat down in the snow and hugged the wolf pup into his face. Its fur was soft and warm against his cheek. Direwolves loose in the realm after so many years, muttered Holland, the master of horse. I like it not. It is a sign, Jory said. Father frowned. It is only a dead animal, Jory, he said, yet he seemed troubled. Snow crouched under his boots as he moved around the body. Do we know what killed her? There is something in the throat, Rob told him, proud to have found the answer before his father even asked. There, just under the jaw. His father knelt and groped under the beast's head with his hand. He gave a jank and held it up for all to see. A foot of slathered antler tine snapped off, all wet with blood. A sudden silence descended over the party. The men looked at the antler uneasily, and no one dared to speak. Even Bran could sense their fear, though he did not understand. His father tossed the antler to the side and clenched his hands in the snow. Surprised she lived long enough to whelp, he said. His voice broke the spell. Maybe she didn't, Jory said. Heard tales. Maybe the bitch was already dead when the pups came. Born with the death, another man put it. Worse luck. No matter, said Holland. They be dead soon enough too. Bran gave a wordless cry of dismay. The sooner the better, Theon Greyjoy agreed. He drew his sword. Give the beast here, Bran. The little thing squirmed against him as if it heard and understood. No! Bran cried out fiercely. It's mine. Put away your sword, Greyjoy, Robb said. For a moment he sounded as commanding as their father, like the lord he would some day be. We will keep these pups. You cannot do that, boy, Hardwin, who was Holland's said Harwin, who was Holland's son. It'd be a mercy to kill them, Holland said. Bran looked to his lord father for rescue, but only got a frown and a furrowed bow. Holland speaks truly, son. Better a swift death than a hard one from cold and starvation. No! He could feel tears welling in his eyes, and he looked away. He did not want to cry in front of his father. Robb resisted stubbornly. Sir Roderick's red bitch whelped again last week, he said. It was a small litter, only 2 live pups. She'll have milk enough. She'll rip them apart when they try to nurse. Lord Stark, Jon said. It was strange to hear him call father that, so formal. Bran looked at him with desperate hope. They have 5 pups, told father. 3 male, 2 female. What of it, Jon? You have 5 true-born children, Jon said. 3 sons, 2 daughters. The direwolf is the sigil of your house. Your children were meant to have these pups, my lord. Bran saw his father's face change, saw the other men exchange glances. He loved Jon with all his heart at that moment. Even at 7, Bran understood what his brother had done. The cat had come right only because Jon had omitted himself. He had included the girls, included even Rickon, the baby, but not the bastard who bore the surname Snow, the name that custom decreed be given to all those in the north unlucky enough to be born with no name of their own. Their father understood as well. You want no pup for yourself, Jon? He asked softly. The direwolf graces the banners of House Stark, Jon pointed out. I am no Stark, father. Their lord father regarded Jon thoughtfully. Robb rushed into the silence he left. I will nurse him myself, father, he promised. I will soak a towel with warm milk and give him suck from that. Me too, Bran echoed. The lord weighed his sons long and carefully with his eyes. Easy to say and harder to do. I will not have you wasting the servants' time with this. If you want these pups, you will feed them yourselves. Is that understood? Bran nodded eagerly. The pup squirmed in his grasp, licked at his face with a warm tongue. You must train them as well, their father said. You must train them. The kennel master will have nothing to do with these monsters, I promise you that. And the gods will help you if you neglect them, or brutalize them, or train them badly. These are not dogs to beg for treats and slink off at a kick. A direwolf will rip a man's arm off his shoulder as easily as a doll will kill a rat. Are you sure you want this? Yes, father, Bran said. Yes, Robb agreed. The pups may die anyway, despite all you do. They won't die, Robb said. We won't let them die. Keep them then. Jory, Desmond, gather up the other pups. It's time we were back to Winterfell. It was not until they were mounted and on their way that Bran allowed himself to taste the sweet air of victory. By then, his pup was snuggled inside his leathers, warm against him, safe for the long ride home. Bran was wondering what to name him. Halfway across the bridge, Jon pulled up suddenly. What is it, Jon? Their lord father asked. Can't you hear it? Bran could hear the wind in the trees, the clatter of their hooves on the ironwood planks, the whimpering of his hungry pup, but Jon was listening to something else. There, Jon said. He swung his horse around and galloped back across the bridge. They watched him dismount where a dire wolf lay dead on where the dire wolf lay dead in the snow. Watched him kneel. A moment later, he was riding back to them, smiling. He must have crawled away from the others, John said, or been driven away, their father said, looking at the sixth pup. His fur was white, where the rest of the litter was gray. His eyes were as red as the blood of the ragged man who had died that morning. Bran thought it was curious that this pup alone would have opened his eyes, while the others were still blind. And albino, Theon Greyjohn said with a wry amusement. This one will die even faster than the others. Jon Snow gave his father's word a long, chilling look. Think not, Greyjoy, he said. This one belongs to me. Okay. Chapter 2 done. Again, this was the first chapter that was written, for the series. The rain is very loud. I'm sorry if you can hear it. I'm actually. Yeah, I actually think you can. Fuck. um. Yep. I don't know. Yeah, because I think I could hear it in the background when I turn up the volume. Anyways, let's continue to chapter 2. This one is from the POV of Catelyn. I'm pretty sure I always pronounced it Caitlyn, but I've been told that it's apparently Catelyn. So, I guess Catelyn it is. Okay, so let's start. Catelyn had never liked this Godswood. She had been burned at. Sorry, not a good start to the chapter. She had been burned. She had been burned at Tully, at Riverrun, far to the south, on the red fork of the Trident. You can actually see that over here. This is the north, the south. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think you can see my mouse. I actually should get. Display browser. No. Okay, I don't know how to make my mouse visible for the Yeah, no, I don't know how to make it visible right now. I'll look into it. Sorry. But yeah, basically you can see it over there in the south. It's over there. That's the Trident, and you can see the three forks: the blue, the green, and the red. And then you can see in the red fork you can see Riverrun. So that's where she's from. And then she goes up, 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 and then she goes to the left map, and then she keeps going up, 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 and then she's kind of at the middle of that map at Winterfell. Okay, so now let's start. Catelyn had never liked this Godswood. She had been burned at Tully, at Riverrun, far to the south, on the red fork of the Trident. The Godswood there was a garden, bright and airy, where tall redwoods spread daped shadows across twinkling streams. Birds sang from hidden nests, and the air was spicy with the scent of flowers. The gods of Winterfell kept a different sort of wood. It was a dark, primal place. 3 acres of old forest untouched for 10,000 years, as the gloomy castle rose around it. It smelled of moist earth and decay. No redwoods grew here. This was a wood of stubborn sentinel trees armored in grey-green needles, of mighty oaks, of ironwoods as old as the realm itself. There, thick black trunks crowded close together, while twisted branches wove a dense canopy overhead, and misshapen roots wrestled beneath the soil. This was a place of deep silence and brooding shadows, and the gods who lived here had no names. But she knew she would find her husband here. Whenever the he took a man's life. Afterwards, he would seek the quiet of the Godswood. Catelyn had been anointed with the seven oils and named in the rainbow of light that filled the sept of Riverrun. She was of the faith, like her father and grandfather and his father before him. Her gods had names, and their faces were as familiar as the faces of her parents. Worship was a septon with a censer, the smell of incense, a seven sided crystal alive with the light, voices raised in song. The Tullys kept a god's wood, as all the great houses did, but it was only a place to walk or read or lie in the sun. Worship was for the sept. For her sake, Ned had built a small sept where she might sing to the seven faces of God, but the blood of the first men still flowed in the veins of the Starks, and his own gods were the old ones, the nameless, faceless gods of the greenwood they shared with the vanished children of the forest. At the center of the grove, an ancient weirwood brooded over a small pool where the waters were black and cold. The heart tree, Ned called it. The weirwood's bark was white as bone, its leaves dark red like a thousand blood-stained hands. I'm sorry. A face had been carved in the trunk of the great tree, its features long and melancholy. The deep cut eyes red with dried sap and strangely watchful. They were old, those eyes, older than Winterfell itself. They had seen Brandon the Builder set the first stone, if the tales were true. They had watched the castle granite walls rise around them. It was said that the children of the forest had carved the faces in the trees during the dawn centuries before the coming of the first men across the narrow sea. In the south, the last weirwoods had been cut down or burned out 1,000 years ago, except on the Isle of Faces, where the green men kept their silent watch. Up here, it was different. Men, okay. Here, every castle had its godswood, and every godswood had its heart tree, and every heart tree its face. Catelyn found her husband beneath the weirdwood, seated on a moss-covered stone. The greatsword eyes, the great sword eyes across his lap, and he was cleaning it, the blade in those waters, black as night. 1,000 years of human lay, no, 1,000 years of humus lay thick upon the godswood floor, swallowing the sound of her feet, but the red eyes of the weirwood seemed to follow her as she came. Ned, she called softly. He lifted his head to look at her. Catelyn, he said. His voice was distant and formal. Where are the children? He would always ask her that. In the kitchen, arguing about the names for the wolf pups. She spread her cloak on the forest floor and sat beside the pool, her back to the weirwood. She could feel the eyes watching her, but she did her best to ignore them. Arya's already in love, and Sansa is charmed and gracious. But Rickon is not quite sure. Is he afraid? Ned asked. A little, she admitted. He is only 3. Ned frowned. He must learn to face his fears. He will not be 3 forever, and winter is coming. Yes, Catelyn agreed. The words gave her a chill, as they always did. The Stark words. Every noble house had its words. Family mottos. Touchstones, prayers of sorts. They boasted of honor and glory, promised loyalty and truth, swore faith and courage, all but the Starks. Winter is coming, said the Stark words. Not for the first time, She reflected on what a strange people these Northerners were. The man died well. I'll give him that, Ned said. He had a swatch of oiled leather in one hand. He ran it lightly up the greatsword as he spoke, polishing the metal to a dark glow. I was glad for Bran's sake. You would have been proud of Bran. I am always proud of Bran, Catelyn replied, watching the sword as he stroked it. She could see the rippling deep within the steel, where the metal had been folded back on itself 100 times in the forging. Catelyn had no love for swords, but she could not deny that ice had its own beauty. It had been forged in Valyria, before the doom had come to the old freehold, when the ironsmiths had worked their metal with spells as well as hammers for 400 years old it was, and as sharp as the day it was forged. The name it bore was Older Steel, a legacy from the Age of Heroes, when the Starks were kings in the north. He was the fourth this year, Ned said grimly. The poor man was half mad. Something had put a fear in him so deep that my words could not reach him. He sighed. Ben writes that the strength of the Night's Watch is down below 1,000. It's not only desertions, they are losing men on rangings as well. Is it the wildlings? She asked. Who else? Ned lifted eyes, looked down the cool steel length of it, and it will only grow worse. The day may come when I have no choice but to call the banners and ride north to deal with this king beyond the wall, for good and all. Beyond the wall, the thought made Catelyn shudder. Ned saw the dread on her face. Man's Raider is nothing for us to fear. There are darker things beyond the wall. She glanced behind her at the hearth tree, the pale bark and red eyes, watching, listening, thinking its long, slow thoughts. His smile was gentle. You listen to too many of old man's stories. The other are as dead as the children of the forest, gone 8,000 years. Maester Lewin will tell you they never lived at all. No living man has ever seen one. Until this morning, no living man had ever seen a dire wolf either. Oh, Catelyn reminded him. I ought to know better than to argue with a Tully, he said with a rueful smile. He slid eyes back into its sheath. You did not come here to tell me crib tales. I know how little you like this place. What is it, my lady? Catelyn took her husband's hand. There was grievous news today, my lord. I did not wish to trouble you until you had cleansed yourself. There was no way to soften the blow, so she told him straight. I am so sorry, my love. Jon Arryn is dead. His eyes found hers, and she could see how hard it took him, and she had known it would, as she had known it would. In his youth, Ned had fostered at the Eyrie, and the childless Lord Arryn had become a second father to him, and his fellow ward, Robert Baratheon, when the mad King Aerys II Targaryen had demanded their heads, the Lord of the Eyrie had raised his moon and falcon banners in revolt rather than give up those he had pledged to protect. And one day, 15 years ago, this second father had become a brother as well, as he and Ned stood together in the sept at Riverrun to wed two sisters, the daughters of Lord Hoster Tully. Jon, he said, is this news certain? It was the king's seal, and the letter is in Robert's own hand. I saved it for you. He said Lord Arryn was taken quickly. Even Maester Pycelle was helpless, but he brought the milk of the puppy, so Jon did not linger long in pain. That is some small mercy, I suppose, he said. She could see the grief on his face. Even then, he thought first of her. Your sister, he said, and Jon's boy, what a word of them. The message said only that they were well and had returned to the Eyrie, Catelyn said. I wish they had gone to River Run instead. The Eyrie is high and lonely, and it was ever her husband's place, not hers. Lord John Lord John's memory will haunt each stone. I know my sister. She needs the comfort of family and friends around her. Your uncle, your uncle waits in the Vale, does he not? John named him Knight of the Gale. I'd heard. Caitlin nodded. Catelyn nodded. Brendan will do what he can for her and for her boy. That is some comfort, but still, go to her, Ned urged. Take the children. Fill her halls with noise and shouts and laughter. The boy of hers needs all the other children about him, and Lysa should not be alone in her grief. Would that I could, Catelyn said. The letter had other tidings. The king is riding to Winterfell to seek you out. It took Ned a moment to comprehend her words, but when the understanding came, the darkness left his eyes. Robert is coming here? When she nodded, a smile broke across his face. Catelyn wished she could share his joy, but she had heard the talk in the yard. The dire wolf dead in the snow, a broken antler in its throat. Dread coiled within her like a snake, but she forced herself to smile at this man she loved, this man who put no faith in signs. I knew that would please you, she said. We should send word to your brother on the wall. Yes, of course, he agreed. Ben will want to be here. I shall tell Maester Lewin to send his swiftest bird. Ned rose and pulled her to her feet. Damnation, how many years has it been? He gives us no more notice than this? How many in his party? Did the message say? I should think 100 knights at least, with all their retainers, and half again as many free riders. Cersei and the children travel with them. Robert will keep an easy pace for their sakes, he said. It is just as well. That will give us more time to prepare. The Queen's brothers are also in the Perry, she told him. Ned grimaced at that. There was small love between him and the Queen's family. Catelyn knew. The Lannisters of Casterly Rock had come late to Robert's cause. When victory was all but certain, he had never forgiven them. Well, it's the price for Robert's company. If the price for Robert's company is an infestation of Lannisters, so be it. It sounds as though Robert is bringing half his court. Where the king goes, the realm follows, she said. It will be good to see the children. The youngest was still sucking at the Lannister woman's teeth the last time I saw him. He must be what? 5 by now? Prince Tommen is 7, she told him. The same age as Bran. Please, Ned, guard your tongue. The Lannister woman is our queen, and her pride is said to grow with every passing year. Ned squeezed her hand. There must be a feast, of course, with singers, and Robert will want to hunt. I shall send Jory south with an honor guard to meet them on the King's Road and escort them back. Gods, how are we going to feed them all? He's way already, you said. Damn the man. Damn his royal hide. Okay, so we are... Okay, so we're 2 chapters in. Well, 3 if you include the prologue. So far, so good. I don't know if I'm gonna continue this making the small summaries in between chapters. But for now, I'll keep it up. I don't know if I'll do this in every stream, but I do know that right now, I think I'm liking that format. So yeah, Jon Arryn died, and now the king is going north to Winterfell to meet Ned. If you see, the king actually lives in King's Landing. King's Landing, you can see the map in the part that says the south in the right. It's somewhere like it's at the east. It's in the Eastern Sea. I cannot see very well the map, but there you can see King's Landing a little bit. There's a little like what's its name? The opposite of a peninsula, where like water is surrounded by land on 3 sides. Well, there's one of those, and then at the edge of that, you can see that there's King's Landing, and then they have to go north, and then you can go to the left side of the map where it says north, and then you can keep going, and that's how far it is. It's pretty big, you know. Yeah, it's quite a distance. Okay, so let's continue. Um. Okay, next chapter is Daenerys' POV. Her brother held the gown up for her. Her brother held the gown up for her inspection. This is beauty. Touch it. Go on. Caress the fabric. Danny touched it. The cloth was so smooth that it seemed to run through her fingers like water. She could not remember ever wearing anything so soft. It frightened her. She pulled her hand away. Is it really mine? A gift from Magister Illyrio, Viserys said, smiling. Her brother was in a high mood tonight. The color will bring out the violet in your eyes, and you shall have gold as well, and jewels of all sorts. Illyrio has promised tonight you must look like a princess. A princess, Dany thought. She had forgotten what that was like. Perhaps she had never really known. Why does he give us so much? She asked. What does he want from us? For nigh on half a year they had lived in the Magister's house, eating his food, pampered by his servants. Danny was 13, old enough to know that such gifts seldom come without their price, here in the free city of Pentos. Illyrio is no fool, Viserys said. He was a gaunt young man with nervous hands and a feverish look in his pale lilac eyes. The Magister knows that I will not forget my friends when I come into my throne. Danny said nothing. Magister Illyrio was a dealer in spices, gemstones, dragonbone, and other less savory things. He had friends all over the 9 free cities, it was said, and even beyond that, in Vaes Dothrak and the fabled lands beside the Jade Sea. It was also said that he'd never had a friend he wouldn't cheerfully sell for the right price. Daniel listened to the talk in the streets, and she heard these things, but she knew better than to question her brother when he wove his webs of dream. His anger was a terrible thing when roused. Viserys called it waking the dragon. Her brother hung the gown beside the door. Illyrio will send the slaves to bathe you. Be sure you wash off the stink of the stables. Khal Drogo has 1,000 horses. Tonight he looks for a different sort of mount. He studied her critically. You still slouch. Straighten yourself. He pushed back her shoulders with his hands. Let them see that you have a woman's shape now. His fingers brushed lightly over her budding breasts and tightened on a nipple. You will not fail me tonight. If you do, I will go hard for you. You don't want to wake the dragon, do you? His fingers twisted her. The pinch cruelly hard through the rough fabric of her tunic. Do you? He repeated. No, Danny said meekly. Her brother smiled. Good. He touched her hair, almost with affection. Aha, so this guy's a creep, by the way. Anyways, he touched her hair, almost with affection. When they write the history of my reign, sweet sister, they will say that it began tonight. When he was gone, Danny went to her window and looked out wistfully on the waters of the bay. The square brick towers of Penthos were black silhouettes outlined against the setting sun. Danny could hear the singing of the red priests as they lit their night fires and the shouts of the ragged children playing games beyond the walls of the estate. For a moment she wished she could be out there with them, barefoot, breathless, and dressed in tatters, with no past, no future, and no feast to attend at Khal Drogo's manse. Somewhere beyond the sunset, across the narrow sea, lay a land of green hills and flowered plains and great rushing rivers, where towers of dark stone rose amidst magnificent blue-gray mountains, and armored knights rode to battle beneath the banners of their lords. The Dothraki called that land Raes Adali, the land of the Andals. Oh, Raesh Andali. Okay, I don't speak Dothraki, so Raesh Andali, the land of the Andals. In the Free Cities, they talked of Westeros and the Sunset Kingdoms. Her brother had a simpler name. Our land, he called it. The words were like a prayer with him. If he said them enough, the gods were sure to hear. Ours by blood right, taken from us by treachery, but ours still, ours forever. You do not steal from the dragon. Oh no, the dragon remembers. And perhaps the dragon did remember, but Dany could not. She had never seen this land her brother said was theirs, this realm beyond the narrow sea, these places he talked of, Castle Rock and the Eyrie, High Garden and the Vale of Erin, Dorne and the Isle of Faces, where they were just words to her. Viserys had been a boy of 8 when they fled King's Landing to escape the advancing armies of the usurper. But Daenerys had had been only a quickening in their mother's womb. Yet some days, Dany would picture the way it had been. So often had her brother told her the stories, the midnight flight to Dragonstone, moonlight shimmering on the ship's back sails, her brother Rhaegar battling the usurper in the bloody waters of the Trident and dying for the woman he loved. The sack of King's Landing by the ones Viserys called the usurper's dog, the lords Lannister and Stark. Princess Elia of Dorne pleading for mercy as Rhaegar's heir was ripped from her breast and murdered before her eyes. The polished skulls of the last dragons staring down sightlessly from the walls of the throne room while the Kingslayer opened Father's throat with a golden sword. She had been born on Dragonstone 9 moons after their flight, while a raging summer storm threatened to rip the island fastness apart. They said that the storm was terrible. The Targaryen fleet was smashed while it lay at anchor, and huge stone blocks were ripped from the parapets and sent hurling into the wild waters of the narrow sea. Her mother had died birthing her, and for that her brother Viserys had never forgiven her. She did not remember Dragonstone either. They had run again, just before the usurper's brother set sail with his new built fleet. By then, only Dragonstone itself, the ancient seat of their house, had remained of the 7 kingdoms that had once been theirs. It would not remain for long. The garrison had been prepared to sell them to the usurper, but one night Sir Willem Darry and 4 loyal men had broken into the nursery and stolen them both along with her wet nurse, and set sail under cover of darkness for the safety of the Brabbosian coast. She remembered Sir Willem dimly, a great grey beard of a man, half blind, roaring and bellowing orders from his sick bed. The servants had lived in terror of him, but he had always been kind to Dany. He called her little princess, and sometimes my lady, and his hands were soft as all the leather. He never left his bed, though, and the smell of sickness clung to him day and night, a hot, moist, sickly sweet odor. That was when they lived in Braavos, in the big house with the red door. Dany had her own room there, with a lemon tree outside her window after Sir Willem had died. The servants had stolen the what little money they had left, and soon after they had been put out of the big house. Dany had cried when the red door closed behind them forever. They had wandered since then, from Braavos to Myr, from Myr to Tyrosh, and on to Kor, and Volantis and Liz, never staying long in any one place. Her brother would not allow it. The usurpers' hired knives were close behind them, he insisted, though Danny had never seen one. At first, the magisters and archons and merchant princes were pleased to welcome the last Targaryens to their homes and tables, but as the years passed and the usurper continued to sit upon the Iron Throne, doors closed and their lives grew meaner. Years passed, they had been forced to sell their last few treasures, and now even the coin they had gotten from Mother's crown had gone. In the alleys and wine sinks of Pentos, they called her brother the Beggar King. Danny did not want to know what they called her. We will have it all back someday, sweet sister, he would promise her. Sometimes his hand shook when he talked about it. The jewels and the skills, Dragonstone and King's Landing, the Iron Throne and the Seven Kingdoms. All they have taken from us, we will have it back. Viserys lived for that day. All that Daenerys wanted back was the big house with the red door, the lemon tree outside her window, the childhood she had never known. There came a soft knock on the door. Come, Danny said, turning away from the window. Illyria's servants entered, bowed, and set about their business. They were slaves, a gift from one of the Magister's many Dothraki friends. There was no slavery in the free city of Pentos. Nonetheless, they were slaves. The old woman, small and grey as a mouse, never said a word, but the girl made up for it. She was Illyria's favorite, a fair-haired, blue-eyed wench of 16 who chattered constantly as she worked. They filled her bath with hot water brought up from the kitchen and scented it with fragrant oils. The girl pulled the rough cotton tunic over Danny's head and helped her into the tub. The water was scalding hot, but Daenerys did not flinch or cry. She liked the heat. It made her feel calm. Besides, her brother had often told her that it was never too hot for a Targaryen. Ours is the house of the dragon, he would say. The fire is in our blood. The old woman washed her long, silver pale hair and gently combed out the snags, all in silence. The girl scrubbed her back and her feet and told her how lucky she was. Drogo is so rich that even his slaves wear golden collars. 100,000 men ride in his Kalasar, and his palace in vast Dothrak has 200 rooms and doors of solid silver. There was more like that, so much more. What a handsome man the Khald was, so tall and fearless in battle, the best rider ever to mount a horse, a demon archer. Daenerys said nothing. She always assumed that she would wed Viserys when she came of age. For centuries, the Targaryen had married brother and sister. Since Aegon the Conqueror had taken his sisters to bride, the line must be kept pure, Viserys had told her 1,000 times. Theirs was the king's blood, the golden blood of old Valyria, the blood of the dragon. Dragons did not mate with the beasts of the field, and the Targaryens did not mingle their blood with that of lesser men. Yet now Viserys schemed to sell her to a stranger, a barbarian. When she was clean, the slaves helped her from the water and toweled her dry. The girl brushed her hair until it shone like molten silver, while the old woman anointed her with the spice flower perfume of the Thraki plains, a dab on each wrist. Behind her ears, on the new tips of her breasts, and one last one, cool on her lips. Down there, between her legs, they dressed her in the whips of that Magister Illyrio had sent up. And then the gown, a deep plump silk to bring out the violet in her eyes. The girls slid the gilded sandals into her feet, while the old woman fixed the tiara in her hair and slid golden bracelets crusted with amethysts around her wrists. Last of all came the color, a heavy golden torque embezzled with ancient Valyrian glyphs. Now you look like a princess, said the girl breathlessly when they were done. Then he glanced at her image in the silvered looking glass that Illyrio had so thoughtfully provided. A princess, she thought. She remembered what the girl had said, how Khal Drogo was so rich even his slaves wore golden colors. She felt a sudden chill, and goose flesh pimpled her bare arms. Her brother was waiting in the cool of the entry hall, seated on the edge of the pool, his hands trailing in the water. He rose when she appeared and looked her over critically. Stand there, he told her. Turn around. Yes, good. You look regal, Master Illyrio said, stepping through an archway. He moved with surprising delicacy for such a massive man. Beneath loose garments of flame-colored silks, rolls of fat jiggled as he walked. Gemstones glittered on every finger, and his man had oiled his forked yellow beard until it shone like real gold. May the Lord of Light shower you with blessings on this most fortunate day, Princess Daenerys, the Magister said as he took her hand. He bowed his head, showing a thin glimpse of a crooked yellow teeth through the gold of his beard. She is a vision, Your Grace, a vision, he told her brother. Drogo will be enraptured. She's too skinny, Viserys said. His hair, same silver blonde as hers, had been pulled back tightly behind his head and fastened with a dragonbone brooch. It was a severe look that emphasized the hard, gaunt lines of his face. He rested his hand on the hilt of the sword that Illyrio had lent him and said, Are you sure Khal Drogo likes his women this young? She has had her blood. She is old enough for the Khal, Illyrio told him. Not for the first time. Look at her. The silver gold hair, those purple eyes. She is the blood of old Valyria, no doubt, no doubt. And highborn, daughter of the old king, sister to the new. She could not fail to entrance our Drogo. When he released her hand, Daenerys found herself trembling. I suppose, her brother said doubtfully, the savages have queer taste. Boys, horses, sheep. Beasts not suggest to this Khal Drogo, Illyrio said. Anger flashed in her brother's lilac eyes. Do you take me for a fool? The master bowed slightly. I take you for a king. Kings lack the caution of common men. My apologies if I have given offense. He turned away and clapped his hands for his bearers. The streets of Pentos were pitch dark when they set out in Illyrio's elaborately carved palanquin. Two servants went ahead to light their way, carrying ornate oil lanterns with paints and pale blue grass, while a dozen strong men hoisted their poles to their shoulders. It was warm and close inside behind the curtains. Then he could smell the stench of Illyrio's pallid flesh through his heavy perfumes. Her brother sprawled out on his pillows beside her, never noticed. His mind was way across the narrow sea. We won't need his whole Khalasar, Viserys said. His fingers toyed with the hilt of his borrowed blade. Through Dany knew he had never used a sword in earnest. 10,000, that would be enough. I could sweep the 7 kingdoms with 10,000 Dothraki screamers. The realm would rise for its rightful king, Tyrell Redwine Darrell Greyjoy. They have no more love for the usurper than I do. The Durnishmans will burn to avenge Elia and her children, and the small folk will be with us. They cry out for their king. He looked at Illyrio anxiously. They do, don't they? They are your people, and they love you well. Master Illyrio said amiably. And hold fast, all across the realm, men lift their toasts to your health while women sew dragon banners and against the day of your return from across the water. He gave a massive shrug, or so my agents tell me. Danny had no agents, no way of knowing what anyone was doing or thinking across the narrow sea, but she mistrusted Illyrio's sweet words as she mistrusted everything about Illyrio. Her brother was nodding eagerly, however. Nodding eagerly, however. I shall, I shall kill the usurper king myself, he promised, who had never killed anyone, as he killed my brother Rhaegar, and Lannister too, the Kingslayer, for what he did to my father. That would be most fitting, Magister Illyrio said. Then he saw the smallest hint of a smile playing around in his full lips, but her brother did not notice. Nodding, he pushed back a curtain and stared off into the night. Then he knew he was fighting the battle of the Trident once again. The 9-towered manse of Khal Drogo sat beside the waters of the bay, its high brick walls overgrown with pale ivy. It had been given to them. Been given to the Khal by the magisters of Pentos, Illyrio told them. The free cities were always generous to the horse lords. It is not that we fear these barbarians, Illyrio would explain with a smile. The Lord of Light would hold our city walls against 1,000,000 Dothraki, or so the Red Priests promise. Yet, why take chances when a friendship comes so cheap? Their palanquin was stopped at the gate, the curtains pulled roughly back by one of the house guards. He had the copper skin and dark almond eyes of a Dothraki, but his face was hairless, and he wore the spiked bronze cap of the Unsullied. He looked them over coldly. Magister Illyrio growled something to him in the rough Dothraki tongue. The guardsman replied in the same voice and waved them through the gates. Then he noticed that her brother's hand was clenched tightly around the hilt of his borrowed sword. He looked almost as frightened as she felt. Insolent eunuch, eunuch, I'm sorry. Insolent eunuch, Viserys muttered as the palanquin lurched up towards the manse. Magister Illyrio's words were honey. Many important men will be at the feast tonight. Such men have enemies. The Khal must protect his guests. Yourself, chief among them. Your Grace, no doubt the usurper would pay well for your head. Oh yes, Viserys said darkly. He has tried, Illyrio. I promise you that. His hired knives follow us everywhere. I am the last dragon, and he will not sleep easy while I live. The palanquin slowed and stopped. The curtains were thrown back, and the slave offered a hand to help Daenerys out. His color, she noted, was ordinary bronze. Her brother followed, one hand still clenched hard around the sword hilt. It took 2 strong men to get Magister Illyrio back on his feet. Inside the manse, the air was heavy with the scent of spices, pinch fire, and sweet lemon and cinnamon. They were escorted across the hall where the mosaic of colored glass depicted the doom of Valyria. Oil burned in black iron lanterns all along the walls. Beneath an arch of twining stone leaves, a eunuch sang their coming. Viserys of House Targaryen, the third of his name, he called on a high, sweet voice. King of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm. His sister, Daenerys Stormborn, Princess of Dragonstone. His honorable host, Illyrio Mopatis, Magister of the Free City of Pentos. They stepped past the eunuch, into a pillared courtyard, overgrown in pale ivy. Moonlight painted the leaves in shades of bone and silver, and the guests drifted among them. Many were Dothraki horse lords, big men with red-brown skin, their drooping mustachios bound in metal rings, their black hair oiled and braided and hung with bells. Yet among them moved Yeah, moved bravos and sellswords from Pentos and Mir and Tyrosh, a red priest even fatter than Illyrio, hairy men from the port of Even, and lords from the summer isles with skin as black as ebony. Daenerys looked at them all in wonder and realized, with a sudden start of fear, that she was the only woman there. Illyrio whispered to them, "Those three are Drogo's blood riders there," he said. "By the pillar is Khal Moro with his son Rogo. The man with the green beard is brother to the Archon of Tyrosh, and the man behind him is Sir Jorah Mormont." The last name caught Daenerys. "A knight?" "No less," Illyrio smiled through his beard. "Anointed with the seven oils by his high septon himself." "What is he doing here?" she blurted. "The usurper wanted his head," Illyrio told them. "Some trifling affront. He sold some poachers to a Tyroshi slaver instead of giving them to the Night's Watch. Absurd law. A man should be able to do as he likes with his own chattel. I shall wish to speak with Sir Jorah before the night is done," her brother said. Dany found herself looking at the knight curiously. He was an older man, past 40 and balding, but still strong and fit. Instead of silks and cottons, he wore wool and leather. His tunic was dark green, embroidered with the likeness of a black bear standing on two legs. She was still looking at this strange man from the homeland she had never known when Magister Illyrio placed a moist hand on her bare shoulder. "Over here, sweet princess," he whispered. There is the Khal himself." Dany wanted to run and hide, but her brother was looking at her, and if she displeased him, she knew she would wake the dragon. Anxiously, she turned and looked at the man Viserys hoped would ask to wed her before the night was done. The slave girl had not been far wrong, she thought. Khal Drogo was a head taller than the tallest man in the room, yet somehow light on his feet, as graceful as the panther in Illyrio's menagerie. Sorry, I don't know that word. He was younger than she had thought, no more than 30. His skin was the color of polished copper, his thick mustachios bound with gold and bronze rings. "I must go and make my submissions," Magister Illyrio said. "Wait here, I shall bring him to you." Her brother took her by the arm as Illyrio waddled over to the cowl, his fingers squeezing so hard that they hurt. "You see his braid, sweet sister." Drogo's braid was black as midnight and heavy with scented oil, hung with tiny bells that rang softly as he moved. Some well past his belt, below even his buttocks, the end of it brushing against the back of his thighs. "You see how long it is?" Viserys said. "When the Thraki are defeated in combat, they cut off their braids in disgrace. So the world will know their shame. Khal Drogo has never lost a fight. He's Aegon the Dragon Lord come again, and you will be his queen." Dany looked at Khal Drogo. His face was hard and cruel, his eyes as cold and dark as onyx. Her brother hurt her sometimes when she woke the dragon, but he did not frighten her the way this man frightened her. "I don't want to be his queen," she heard herself say in a mild, thin voice. "Please, please, Viserys, I don't want to. I want to go home." "Home!" He kept his voice low, but she could hear the fury in his tone. "How are we to go home, sweet sister? They took our home from us." He drew her into the shadows, out of sight, his fingers digging into her skin. "How are we to go home?" he repeated, meaning King's Landing and Dragonstone and all the realm they had lost. Dany had only meant the rooms in Illyrio's estate. No true home, surely, though all they had, but her brother did not want to hear that. There was no home there for him. Even the big house with the red door had not been home for him. His fingers dug hard into her arm, demanding an answer. "I don't know," she said at last, her voice breaking. Tears swelled in her eyes. "I do," he said sharply. "We go home with an army, sweet sister. with Khal Drogo's army. That is how we go home. And if you must wed him and bet him for that, you will. He smiled at her. I'd let this whole Kalasar fuck you if need be, sweet sister. All 40,000 men and their horses too, if that was what it took to get my army. Be careful, it is only Drogo. In time, you may even learn to like him. Now dry your eyes. Illyrius bring him over, and he will not see you crying. Okay, I know I said earlier that I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word on Twitch, but Viserys is a cunt, right? Like like I feel like he deserves it way more. Like the other guy was kind of an arse, but this guy, oh boy. Okay, Danny turned and saw that it was true. Magister Illyrio, all smiles and bows, was escorting Khal Drogo over to where they stood. She brushed away unfallen tears with the back of her hand. Smile, Viserys whispered nervously, his hand falling to the hilt of his sword. And stand up straight. Let him see that you have breasts. God knows you have little enough as it is. Daenerys smiled and stood up straight. Okay. Okay. Good. That was a good chapter, I feel. Yeah. We read Daenerys, we read Catelyn, and we read Brandon, as well as the prologue. Yes, it was a good stream. Yeah, I actually really liked it. I also like that last chapter. Like, it's very different. Like, the Daenerys chapters are very different, but I've always really liked them because of how different they are. Like, the different culture that you get to experience through them. Sorry. So yeah, I've always really liked. You know, I don't know. The different point of views are all like it's a great way to tell the story, I believe. And yeah, I think that there's a reason why this whole series became like probably the most famous, novel series of our lifetime. And it might stay that way for a while. So, yeah, I actually really enjoy it. I'm really liking it so far. You're seeing all these different characters, how they perceive each other through the different POVs. I like that a lot. And yeah, I actually kind of want to stay and discuss what we read today for a little bit, but I can't because I kind of have to. I have plans in a couple, like in 15 minutes. I need to go work in a group project. So yeah, I can't. Otherwise, I definitely would. And even then, maybe I still have other homeworks, not just the group project. So who knows? Maybe I wouldn't. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you so much to Hoss00312 for the follow. It's really appreciated. And as always, I hope I can earn everybody's support here. I hope this can this can become something like I don't know. I hope I can keep going. I guess it's what I'm saying. Right now I really don't know what to hope for other than to keep going, because I'm really enjoying streaming. So yeah, I hope I get to do that. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much. Even if you're just watching the POV, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. So sorry because at the beginning I forgot to actually turn on the microphone and the audio was awful again for a moment, even though I hyped it out so much. But hey, like it only took me like 15 minutes, and then it was like only 15 minutes to do it. So also sorry because I was pretty late today. I'm gonna make sure that doesn't happen again. But thank you so much for coming here. Thank you so much, for staying with me. It was pretty hot today, so thank you, chat. Thank you for that. And you're welcome as well, chat. So yeah, thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you next week. Wait, not next week. Fuck. Next, what day is it today? Today's Monday. Wednesday, was it? Yes, I believe it was next Wednesday. So I'll see you on Wednesday. I'm sorry. I'm a bit. I'm thinking of other things. Thank you so much for coming, and yeah, I'll see you Wednesday. Bye bye.